My parents spent years making fun of my construction job. Now, I make more than they do combined, and I've completely written them out of my will. I'm a 34-year-old guy who owns a construction company in Phoenix. We specialize in fancy backyard projects like pools, outdoor kitchens, and fire features. Most people don't realize how tough it was to get my business off the ground. I started out with just myself, a beat-up truck, and maxed-out credit cards. I took any job I could get, including fixing decks, installing fences, and patching concrete. I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week. My hands were always stained with concrete dust, and my back felt like it was held together with duct tape to save money on gas. I would sleep in my truck at job sites during the week. My bed was the cab of a 2008 Ford F-150 with 173,000 miles on it, and the heater only worked sometimes. Winter nights in Arizona aren't as nice as they sound when you're sleeping in a metal box. I even lost my place to live after a client refused to pay me for a $12,000 patio project. He complained that the stonework didn't match the picture, even though the contract said that natural stone varies in color. That taught me an expensive lesson about payment plans and deposits. A lawyer wanted $5,000 just to start the process, and I didn't have the money. Then I got a small pool installation job for a retired couple. Before that, my portfolio was just phone pictures of decks and patios. They took a chance on me because their grandson and I played on the same high school football team. Those kinds of connections only get you a foot in the door. You still have to prove yourself. They recommended me to their neighbor, who then recommended me to their son. It was networking 101. I hired my first employee, Diego, who is still with my company today. I found him working as a day laborer outside of Home Depot. He was more talented than half the contractors I'd ever met. He just needed a chance and some paperwork. I personally paid for his certification classes, which was the best investment I ever made. The supply chain issues almost ruined us. Lumber prices shot up overnight. I had to explain to my clients why their quotes had suddenly gone up by 40%, and we lost half of our projects. I started chasing supplies like it was a competitive sport. I would drive to suppliers at 4:30 a.m. to be first in line and call in favors from guys I had helped out. We even traded materials with other contractors to make sure none of us went under. One week I drove 1,200 miles across Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico to find specific tiles a client wanted. I only slept for about 20 hours that whole week, but the client had no idea. To them, the job was just on time. A local news anchor hired us for a small project and then did a story about it. Our Instagram followers tripled in a week. That's when we started focusing only on high-end projects. I turned down a $50,000 renovation to take a $120,000 bill that would really make us stand out. It was a risky move, but playing it safe wouldn't have gotten me out of that truck. The client from the renovation I passed on called me to complain, then came back later offering to pay double my original quote. Now we have 20 employees, 3 crews working at once, and a 3-month waiting list. Last quarter, we completed $430,000 in projects with a 22% profit margin, which was our best quarter ever. By Phoenix contractor standards, that's the big leagues. I don't drive a Lamborghini or post pictures of Rolexes. My idea of being flexible is being efficient. Every foreman has a company card with spending limits that I watch in real time. We switched to a program called Builder Trend for client quotes, change orders, and project schedules, which cut our administrative time almost in half. I fired a guy who showed up twice smelling like vape juice and making excuses. I told the crew exactly why someone can't show up on time, sober and ready to work. He's not just hurting himself, he's putting all our paychecks at risk. That's not drama, it's just how we do things. Every single dime in my bank account was earned by working harder than anyone else. No handouts, no family loans, no help. This is a big deal because my family still treats me like I'm a broke kid, even though I make more than both of my parents put together at one of those high-end projects. I met Sophie, the client's interior designer. She was smart as hell, beautiful, and refreshingly direct. There was no playing hard to get nonsense. She called me about granite samples and said, "You free on Friday? I know a place with good tacos." She was raised by her grandmother because her parents left when she was 8. She went to design school while taking care of her grandmother, who had dementia. This woman knows what a real struggle looks like. When we first started dating, she would sometimes bring coffee for the whole crew, not just me. That's how I knew she was different. She respected the work itself, not just the money it brought in. Here's a quick rundown of my family. My dad, Frank, is a supervisor for a grocery chain district and makes about $85,000. My mom, Linda, is an elementary school administrator. My sister, Chelsea, says she's a marketing consultant but hasn't had a real client in years. She lives in my parents' basement and acts like she runs a business empire on Instagram. Her room is still exactly the way it was, with high school participation awards and boy band posters. She just added a ring light and a girl boss sign for her daily motivational videos, which get 12 views. Growing up, the family dynamic was obvious. Chelsea could do no wrong and I could do no right. They called her dropping out of college to travel to Europe, brave self-discovery. But when I worked construction in the summers to pay for business school, they called it settling for manual labor. My dad would walk through our job sites and point out mistakes that were actually just unfinished work. He still does it. He even came to a $300,000 lake house project we were doing and right in front of the homeowner, told him that the slope on the deck looked strange. It didn't. We were in the middle of laser leveling the supports. The homeowner was hesitant until I showed him the plans and the equipment. My mom wasn't any better. When I made the dean's list in business school for 3 semesters in a row, she said, "If only you had applied yourself like this in high school." I was working 30 hours a week in college and 15 hours a week in high school while also playing sports. Chelsea has been a headache from day one. She announced she was going plant-based the moment my mom put the turkey on the table. She made a big show of only eating side dishes and gagging whenever someone cut into the meat. This is the same Chelsea I had seen eating a bacon cheeseburger the week before when I pointed out, "Funny how your plant-based diet includes those leather boots you bought last week." She threw cranberry sauce at me. I just wiped it off and kept eating while everyone pretended not to notice. Another time, at my cousin's wedding, she cornered me to explain how my company was bad for the environment because concrete manufacturing releases carbon dioxide. This came from someone who takes 40-minute showers and leaves every light on in the house. I asked her how much she enjoyed driving her SUV to the salon for her monthly blowout. She didn't talk to me for months, which were the most peaceful months of my life. The hypocrisy is what gets to me. She preaches about sustainability, but buys fast fashion every week. She talks about economic inequality but hasn't had a real job in years. She posts about hustle culture but sleeps until noon every day. Sophie first met my family at Christmas last year. Chelsea showed up with a small guy in a turtleneck whom she introduced as her business partner. They spent the whole dinner talking about their new wellness platform that was going to disrupt the mindfulness space. The app supposedly combined meditation, Bitcoin, and social media. It was like putting a bunch of random buzzwords in a blender. When I asked basic questions about how they would make money or get users, she got defensive and said, "Not everything is about money." I laughed and said, "It's hard to make a difference from your mom's basement." My dad nearly choked on his water. After dinner, while I was getting drinks, Chelsea cornered Sophie in the kitchen. When I walked in, Chelsea was saying something about my building phase not lasting, and that Sophie should have a backup plan in case it all fell apart. Sophie just smiled and replied, "Actually, I've seen his books. Maybe you should ask him for investment advice instead of whatever that turtleneck guy is selling you." Chelsea stormed off, and Sophie just smirked at me. That's my girl. I've always hated family get-togethers, but skipping them leads to weeks of texts about how important I am now. So, I usually just show up, keep my head down, and wait for it to be over. I called my dad to ask about their plans, and his tone was unusually casual. He said, "We're just doing something small this year. Your mother wants to keep it low-key." I figured it meant the usual meal at their house with some flowers, nothing big. Before he hung up, he said, "Don't bother coming this time. There's no need for gifts either. Just focus on your business." The drive from Phoenix is a pain, so I felt a moment of relief. Maybe they finally realized I was building something real, but years of family history had taught me to be suspicious. Later, I was having beers with my friend Derek, who I met in business school and now owns a plumbing company. We were talking about real business problems like supplier issues and employee management, not Instagram followers. Derek was skeptical. When I told him about my dad's call, he said, "It sounds like a trap. If you don't go, you've skipped Mother's Day. If you do go, they'll act like you're crashing." Sophie, who joined us after a client meeting, agreed. She said, "Your sister has been posting all week about a major Mother's Day surprise." Sophie follows Chelsea on social media just to keep tabs on her, comparing it to tracking a very unpredictable weather system. Derek's words stuck with me. I knew I needed an amazing gift. I remembered a conversation from years ago. My mom had mentioned wanting to go to Skyrock, a fancy wellness center near Sedona, saying it was her dream getaway but too expensive. My dad had laughed and said, "Maybe when we win the lottery." The next morning, I looked up Skyrock Sedona. They had a rejuvenation weekend package, 3 days and 2 nights of spa treatments, guided meditation, hiking, and all meals included. It costs $3,800 for 2 people years ago. That amount would have been my entire emergency fund. Now I could write the check without a second thought. Business was good. We had just finished a $230,000 backyard project for a tech executive, which came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The client had already referred his friends. I booked the package for the weekend after Mother's Day. I put down my parents' names and paid in full. They even arranged for champagne in their suite. For once, I was actually looking forward to a family gathering. I should have known better. Sophie and I drove 2 hours from Phoenix to Tucson on Sunday morning. I told Diego I would be off the grid for the day, which was unusual since I normally take client calls 7 days a week. As soon as I turned onto my parents' street, I knew something was wrong. Cars were parked on both sides of the street. I counted at least 15 cars, including my aunt's Range Rover and my uncle's ridiculous Hummer, which he bought for off-roading but has never taken off a paved road. I found a spot 3 houses down and walked up with the envelope holding the retreat reservations. Sophie was by my side, looking beautiful in a simple blue dress, and she squeezed my hand, sensing my anxiety. The front door was unlocked, so I walked in and followed the noise to the backyard. As I got close to the patio doors, I heard my uncle say, "I thought Logan wasn't coming today." Then my dad said he couldn't make it. Probably for the best, that guy would just bring down the mood with his contractor stories. "At least we have Chelsea here showing us her new presentation," he added. I froze, hiding behind the doorframe, and Sophie squeezed my hand tighter. The backyard had been completely redone. The tables were decorated with fancy flower arrangements. A big Happy Mother's Day Linda banner sign was up, and catering staff were setting up what looked like a gourmet meal. There were at least 30 people on the professionally landscaped patio, which I had offered to redo for free, but they had turned me down because your sister's friend knows a guy. My cousin Jared saw me first and yelled, "Holy crap, Logan is here. Welcome, brother." Everyone turned to look. My dad quickly said, "Just kidding around, son," before turning away to talk to my uncle as if I wasn't even there. When I stepped into the backyard, the whispering started immediately. Comments about me showing up empty-handed, still driving the same truck, and how Chelsea had recently gotten a huge investment for her software. I heard things like, "Must not be doing as well as he claims, and still has dirt under his fingernails." The last one was true. I had been helping a crew with some masonry the day before because one of the guys called in sick. The owner still gets his hands dirty when needed. Imagine that. I saw Chelsea holding court near the bar, wearing huge designer sunglasses and waving to a group of relatives. When she saw me, she sneered and said something to our cousin, who laughed. Then her eyes landed on Sophie and she quickly rolled them. I went over to my mom at the main table. She frowned and asked, "Why didn't you call about coming?" And then she looked at my hands. "You didn't even bring anything for your mother. Wow, very classy." She then turned to Sophie with a fake smile. "And you brought your girlfriend. How nice. Did you know it's a family event?" Sophie just smiled back and said, "Actually, I'm his fiancée. We got engaged last month." She held up her left hand to show the diamond I had proposed with after we landed our biggest deal yet. "I guess our announcement got lost in the mail, just like our invitation," I added. I started to reach for the envelope in my pocket, but I stopped. The whole thing was a setup. This wasn't a last-minute get-together. It was a planned event that I was intentionally left out of. Suddenly, Chelsea's business partner Travis walked up in another ridiculous turtleneck even though it was 85 degrees. He looked like a caricature of a Silicon Valley startup guy, right down to the $400 minimalist sneakers that looked like hospital shoes. He made a snarky comment about my construction job, asking if I had ever thought about getting into tech because that's where the real money is. This was coming from a guy who had yet to ship a real product. I casually mentioned that we had just finished a project for his company's CFO, who had turned down their app investment. "Nice guy." Brad said something about your pitch deck having ridiculous projections. "Small world," I said. Travis's smug look vanished, and Chelsea's eyes narrowed. I found an empty chair near my cousin Jared and headed for it, with Sophie by my side. Jared had always been good to me. He's a firefighter who hates BS as much as I do. Just as I was about to sit down, Chelsea came back and told me that Travis's seat was taken and I could get a folding chair from the garage. She looked at Sophie and said, "And I'm not sure where your +1 is supposed to sit. We didn't plan for any extras." Jared immediately stood up and said, "I'll help you," and followed me inside. As we walked to the garage, he quietly said, "What the hell, man? Dad said it was supposed to be small." Then Aunt Linda called and said it was all about the catering. Every time I asked who was coming, she changed the subject. "Now I get it. Apparently I didn't make the cut," I replied, grabbing 2 metal folding chairs. We went back to the yard and set them up at the edge of the patio. Instead of going back to his own table, Jared pulled his chair up next to me, a small gesture that meant more than he could imagine. My dad clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. He said it was time to celebrate our beautiful Linda and invited everyone to the catered lunch. After the obligatory song and photos, everyone gathered around the catering table. I was about to join them when my dad said, "Logan, we didn't include you in the caterer's headcount. Just get a drink or something." The entire backyard went silent. I stared at my dad, trying to understand what he had just said. "Are you kidding me right now?" The words just came out. He said, "Watch your language, Logan," and added, "No, I'm not kidding. We spent $35 a person for this meal, and you weren't." On the list I looked around. Some people looked uncomfortable, others were clearly enjoying the show, and most were suddenly very interested in their drinks. Then my mom stood up and smoothed her blouse. "We told Logan not to come today. You chose to ignore it. We can't just make food appear," she said. Jared spoke up. "Mrs. D, he's welcome to share my plate. I won't eat much anyway." My dad waved his hand dismissively. No, he showed up uninvited. He can wait until everyone else is done eating. I asked, since when do I need an invitation to see my mother on Mother's Day? You want me to wait until everyone is done, like I'm a stray dog? Sophie chimed in. So, just to be clear, you are telling your own son that he can't eat at your family gathering because you didn't budget for him. Chelsea jumped in. No one asked for your opinion. You don't even belong here, so keep your mouth shut. I pointed at her and said, watch your freaking mouth. You don't get to talk to her like that. Neither does Logan, apparently, Sophie replied. She turned to me and said, babe, we can get lunch on the way home. This isn't worth it. That was it. Something inside me just snapped, not with anger, but with a sudden, clear realization. It was like looking at a complicated blueprint and suddenly seeing the solution. Just so you all know, I actually did bring something. I said. I took the envelope from my pocket and handed it to Jared. Will you open it for me, bro? Looked confused but gently opened it, and his eyes widened when he saw the reservation confirmation. At my request, he read it out loud. Skyrock Wellness Retreat, Sedona. Premium rejuvenation package for 2-3 days, 2 nights in a mountain, view suite, all meals, spa treatments, and activities included. Guests Frank and Linda. Total value, $3,800 paid in full. Holy crap, Logan, he said. Everyone was silent. A few family members started checking their phones to see the price. My Aunt Marlene was scanning the Skyrock website, her eyes getting bigger with every picture she saw. You could have heard a pin drop. My mom's jaw literally dropped. Then they tried to backtrack. Logan, we didn't know, my mom said weakly. I said calmly, look, we were just joking around. My dad explained. You know how family is. Sit down, have some food. I stayed standing. That package includes a couple's massage, guided meditation, hikes, and a private dinner on the terrace overlooking the mountains, I said. Everything Mom mentioned wanting to do someday when you had the money. Travis tried to butt in. Linda, sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. Perhaps this retreat could be ... double quotes. Shut up, Travis. Several people said at once. I turned back to Jared. Those reservations are in my parents' names, but they can be transferred. I'd like you and Emily to have them. Jared was stunned, saying, but this was for your parents. The look on his face said $3,2 more clearly than any words could. Not anymore, I said firmly. My parents made it very clear today where I stand in this family. My dad stepped forward, his face red. You can't do that. Those are our reservations, he said. Actually, they're my reservations, I replied. I paid for them, and I can give them to whoever I want. I turned to Jared. You and Emily haven't had a vacation since the twins were born, right? Logan, please, my mum said, her voice suddenly soft. We were just surprised to see you. You know we love you. We can all talk about this later as a family. I laughed. Yeah, sure. I promised Jared I would call Skyrock the next day to change the names on the reservation and send him the information. You're making a scene, Chelsea muttered, looking at the shocked relatives. No, you all made the scene, I said. I'm just finally walking off the set. As I walked toward the gate to leave, with Sophie by my side, my cousin Rachel called out that she was coming with us. Rachel is Chelsea's younger sister who moved to Colorado for a developer job. When I told her she didn't have to leave, they said, what they did was completely messed up, and I've been watching this nonsense for years. Someone finally said it, she mumbled, grabbing her jacket. I've been biting my tongue since 2015. Jared joined us and handed me the envelope, telling me to keep it safe until tomorrow. He was already texting Emily about their unexpected plans. To my surprise, my Uncle Ben, my dad's younger brother who moved to Alaska and became the family's black sheep, was leaning against my truck. He had flown down for the occasion, hoping things had gotten better in the past 10 years. One look at the situation showed they hadn't. Some things never change, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I was about to make my exit. To mind if I join. The 5 of us ended up at a local sports bar, ordering tons of food and swapping family horror stories. Uncle Ben had cut ties with his family and started a successful fishing charter business in Alaska. Rachel was doing great as a software developer. Jared, while happy as a firefighter, was dealing with his own family problems. Between bites of a burger that tasted 10 times better than any catered food, Uncle Ben explained how my parents had always cared more about appearances than the truth. They'd rather have a prestigious daughter who was actually broke than a successful son in a blue-collar job, he said. He told me my dad wanted to be an architect but couldn't handle the math, so he manages grocery stores but pretends he's an executive. Your success reminds him of what he couldn't accomplish. Then Rachel revealed that Chelsea hasn't had a real client in over a year. She lives in their basement, making fake business calls all day and sometimes even talking to herself with no one on the other end. She works for DoorDash 3 times a week while telling everyone she's networking with executives. Last month, she even asked Rachel to pretend to be a Silicon Valley investor on a Zoom call. She wanted Rachel to use a British accent for some reason. When Rachel refused, Chelsea got mad and blocked her for a week. That explained why they were so bothered by my success. Their golden child was failing, but I was succeeding, and they refused to acknowledge it. It was easier to keep up the pretense even when the truth was right in front of them. Sophie added that Chelsea had DM'd her last month asking if we needed a brand ambassador because of her strong social media presence. This was just a week after Chelsea had gone on an Instagram live rant about capitalism exploiting creatives. Sophie didn't respond. Chelsea's last post had 8 likes, including one from an NFT bot pitching investment synergy. Sophie showed me the message and I just laughed. You don't hire the person who lit your truck on fire just because you're low on gas. She didn't respond. I guess she couldn't find the right filter for that. I almost choked on my water. Chelsea, who had been bad-mouthing my business for years, secretly wanted to work with me. The irony was just beautiful. Jared mentioned that Emily had a gallbladder surgery and they were falling behind on their mortgage because of the medical bills. Someone had anonymously paid for it, and they had always wondered who it was. I tried to change the subject, but Jared kept pushing. Finally, I just shrugged and said, "You guys fed us every night for a week after I hurt my ankle on a construction site. Emily watched my dog while I flew to that supplier conference. What goes around comes around, man," I said. "And today, they wouldn't even let you eat," he replied. We talked about my next move, a full cut-off. Uncle Ben agreed, saying it was the best decision he had ever made. "The first year is tough, but after that comes freedom," he told me. "They'll try everything. Guilt trips, fake health scares, and financial emergencies. Stay strong. Your real family is sitting around this table." Rachel invited Sophie and me to her housewarming party in Denver, promising to introduce us to people who aren't complete narcissists. "Plus, we can go mountain biking if you're into that," she said. "There's more to life than family drama." For the first time all day, I felt a sense of peace. The fallout was immediate. By the time we got back to Phoenix that night, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I ignored them all and had the best sleep I'd had in years. First thing Monday morning, I called my attorney Emma. We met when I needed contracts for my business, and she has handled a number of legal things for me since. I asked her to add a nuclear option to my will and company succession plan. It was a no-blood clause that specifically prevented my parents and sister from inheriting anything or having any stake in my business, no matter what. When she said, it was pretty definitive. I just said, "Recent events have clarified my priorities." "Families are complicated," she said, not asking for details. "That's why I like Emma. No unnecessary questions, just efficient solutions." I signed the papers. My inheritance would be split between reliable employees like Diego, a scholarship fund for trade school students, and close relatives like Jared, Rachel, and Uncle Ben. My parents in Chelsea were specifically excluded, with language stating that any attempt to challenge it would result in a penalty that would send the money to charities they disliked. Emma suggested environmental charities, knowing my sister's hypocrisy about her carbon footprint. Next, I called Skyrock to transfer the reservation to Jared and Emily. Then I blocked my parents and Chelsea's numbers and went back to work. Business was booming. We had just signed a contract to build a custom pool and outdoor kitchen for a local news anchor. That same week, I promoted Diego to operations director and gave him a 15% raise. He had earned it by stepping up during the chaos and keeping projects on track while I was dealing with my personal issues. That's what real loyalty looks like. They showed up at my office without an appointment. Laura, our receptionist, buzzed. "Me, Frank, Linda, and Chelsea are here to see you," she said. "They don't have an appointment. They say it's urgent family business." I told her to let them come in, thinking I might as well get it over with. When they walked in, they didn't look like the confident people from Mother's Day. My mom looked tired. My dad's posture was slumped, and even Chelsea looked messy. The fancy clothes were gone, replaced by what looked like regular business casual. I realized they were dressed up to ask for money. My dad nervously complimented my office as he looked around at the modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. "Really professional setup," he said, as if he was shocked. "Are those awards real?" he asked, pointing to the wall of industry honors. "No, Dad, I got fake awards to impress clients," I said. Dryly, "What do you want?" "Is that how you greet your family?" my mom asked. "We haven't heard from you in weeks." I cut right to the chase and asked what they wanted. My mom said they were worried about me, but I quickly pointed out that they were here because they wanted something. Chelsea brought up the family drama. Aunt Karen wasn't talking to my dad. Rachel had blocked my mom online, and Uncle Ben had sent everyone an email calling them toxic. I grinned and said, "That sounds like your problem, not mine." My dad tried to apologize, calling their behavior inappropriate. I said, "Telling someone they can't eat at a family gathering, or calling them a loser in front of everyone is more than inappropriate." "It was a momentary lapse in judgment," he said, as if he was describing forgetting to use a turn signal after a lot of back and forth. My dad finally admitted they needed about $25,000 because of financial difficulties. That was the real reason. They were here, not for an apology, but for a handout. The pieces instantly clicked into place. When I asked what the money was for, they hesitated before my dad revealed it was for Chelsea's wellness app. They had put their life savings into it as seed money, and the developer needed another $25,000 to finish the platform. I smiled, having guessed that the first $30,000 was spent on a fancy logo, professional Instagram photo shoots, and gold-foiled business cards instead of actual software development. Let me guess, Travis's cousin works part-time as a WordPress developer, I asked. Chelsea's expression confirmed it without her saying a word. Amateurs, I said. I told them Travis was scamming them and they had mortgaged their retirement to pay for Chelsea's pet project without asking a single hard question. I could have introduced you to real developers who would have built a working prototype for $5,000 before you committed another dime. I said I told you, but you never asked for my expertise because to you, I'm just the guy who plays with dirt for a living. For $25,000, I could have hired 2 junior devs and a UI guy off Upwork to build a working MVP with integrated analytics and a feedback loop, I added. Instead, you blew it on logo design, gold foil cards, and paid a vegan TikTok girl to promote it. She took the video down after 36 hours. There are 0 users, no feedback, no product, but at least the app had a vibe. When my mom asked if I wouldn't help them, I told her that if they had treated me with basic respect, I would have helped without a second thought. I had helped my employees through tough times. I had even paid for Diego's son's emergency surgery without hesitating, but they were the last people on earth I would give money to. It's not about the money, I clarified. I made more than your loan amount in profit last month. It's about the pattern of behavior that got us here. My mom mumbled something about family, which I corrected firmly. We shared DNA, but that's not the same thing as family. I stood up and mentioned that Jared and Emily had a great time at Skyrock. I showed them the pictures they had sent, including one of them raising glasses on the Mountain View terrace that should have been my parents'. My dad became furious, yelling, "That's it. Years of raising you and you just cut us off. You raised me to be self-sufficient," I replied. Congratulations. It worked. Chelsea tried one more time, claiming she had a job offer in Chicago and needed $3,000 for an apartment security deposit. I just complimented her and told her to go to a bank for a loan. Banks require income verification, she muttered. So do I said. My mom made one last plea, saying they realized they had made a mistake and wanted a second chance. I offered to email them the name of a financial expert who helped people restructure debt, and promised to pay for the first appointment. That was it. My dad complained that wasn't enough. I said calmly, "It's more than you deserve." Then I asked them to leave. If you ever want a real relationship based on mutual respect rather than what I can do for you, the door is open, I said, but it will be on entirely new terms. Diego checked on me after they had left. I told him I was doing great and asked about his house hunting progress. When he brought up the tough market, I offered him a friends and family discount on renovations to make a fixer-upper more affordable. "Are you sure you want to mix business with friendship?" he asked. "You're not a friend," I replied. "You're family." Months have passed. My parents sometimes try to reach me through other relatives, but I've made my position clear. Instead of the family I was born into, I've built something better, a community of people who truly value each other. Last weekend, I flew to Denver for Rachel's housewarming party. Uncle Ben came down from Alaska, and Jared and Emily drove up from Tucson. Sophie and I finalized our wedding plans while we were there. The wedding will be next month at a place overlooking Camelback Mountain. We have already decided that my parents and sister will not be invited. My company just started our most ambitious project yet, a full backyard remodel for a former NFL player that will be featured in a home magazine. We're opening a second location next quarter, and I'm bringing Diego on as a junior partner. He almost cried when I told him. He said he never expected to own a business in America when he crossed the border a decade ago. As for my parents in Chelsea, I heard through Jared that their wellness app investment is gone. The developer disappeared with the money, and Chelsea's job offer inexplicably fell through. They're telling everyone that I abandoned the family when they needed me. But here's the thing, for the first time in my life, I don't care what other people say about me. I'm too busy building something real, and it turns out, that's what's truly important. Sophie and I will get married next weekend. Now that the dust has settled, we're keeping it small, just for those who genuinely support us. Uncle Ben is officiating, and Diego is my best man. Rachel is helping to keep everything organized, and Jared and Emily are bringing the twins. There's no drama, no passive-aggressive comments. No one told me I couldn't eat the food at my own wedding. We even have assigned seats. Sophie's friend made the beautiful calligraphy cards. When one of Jared's cousins jokingly asked if Chelsea had a seat, I just smiled and said, "We didn't budget for extras." Uncle Ben almost snorted his drink. The table erupted in laughter. It felt like justice, but quiet. We chose to celebrate something authentic, with only our family.